Let me ask you something. What if I told you that even after you've sold your car, you've cashed the check, and you've handed over the keys, you could still be legally on the hook for a fatal accident it causes? I know, it sounds impossible, right? But a landmark court case established a rule that every single vehicle owner really needs to understand. This whole thing isn't just a hypothetical. It all stems from a real-life tragedy that ended up setting a major legal precedent. It's the story behind the case of Erezo versus Jepte, a name that would become foundational in traffic law. So let's break down what happened. On a day back in August 1949, a big 6x6 truck crashed into a taxi in Manila. The truck then veered off the road and tragically struck and killed a pedestrian named Ernesto Erezo. Now, the driver was prosecuted, he pleaded guilty, he was sentenced. But that's not where the story ends. The victim's father then filed a civil case against the man whose name was on the truck's official registration papers, a guy named Jepte. The court ordered the driver to pay the victim's family 3,000 pesos in damages. But here's the problem. The driver was insolvent. He had no money. He couldn't pay. This left the grieving family with really no other choice but to go after the only other person they could identify through the official records. And this is where the case takes a really fascinating turn. When the victim's family sued Jepte, the registered owner, they probably thought it was a straightforward case. But instead, Jepte came back with a defense that nobody saw coming. So the whole dispute really boiled down to two totally different stories. Jepte's argument was, hey, I'm not the real owner at all. The truck belongs to my employer, and it was only registered in my name as a sort of convenient arrangement. But the Erezo family's argument was simple, and it was powerful. Your name is on the official government record. As far as the public is concerned, you're the owner, and that makes you responsible. And that set up the central legal question here. Can a registered owner get out of being liable just by pointing the finger and saying someone else is the actual owner? The court's answer to this was going to have some huge implications. So the court had to weigh both sides very carefully. And they knew they weren't just deciding who should pay 3,000 pesos. They were actually setting a major precedent for public safety and accountability on the roads for everyone. And their verdict? It was crystal clear. The court ruled that yes, the registered owner is liable. Jepte was ordered to pay up. His defense that he wasn't the real owner was completely rejected. But the reason why they decided this, well, that's the most important takeaway from this whole thing. See, the really crucial point here is that the court's decision was based on a much bigger idea, protecting the public. They understood that a vehicle registration system isn't just about paperwork, it's a fundamental tool for keeping everyone safe. The court used this really powerful phrase to explain its logic. They warned that if registered owners could just deny ownership whenever they wanted, then the license plate, the very thing meant to identify a vehicle, would become a snare and a delusion. Basically a trap for victims of negligence. The court basically laid out why we even have vehicle registration in the first place. It exists so you can easily identify the owner and pin responsibility on a specific person. This stops the real owner from hiding behind some kind of shell game and makes sure that victims have a clear, reliable way to seek justice without having to launch a massive investigation into some secret ownership deal. In other words, if the court allowed a defense like the one Jepte was trying to use, it would make the law's protection illusionary, just an illusion. The entire system of public safety would pretty much crumble, leaving victims with nobody to hold accountable. So what does this ruling from more than half a century ago mean for every single one of us who owns a car, a truck, or a motorcycle today? Well, it created a really clear and lasting legal doctrine, the registered owner rule. And here's what that rule means, plain and simple. The person whose name is on the official registration is considered the owner when it comes to public liability. For the victim of an accident, it doesn't matter who was driving or who you sold it to yesterday. The law looks first to the name on that piece of paper, period. So how do you protect yourself? This is the practical lesson here. Selling your car is a two-step process. Signing the deed of sale, that's just step one. Step two, and this is the one that is absolutely critical, is going to the motor vehicles office and making sure that registration is officially transferred. Until you do that, you are still on the hook. Now, the court knew this might seem a little harsh, but they called it the price an owner pays for not following the law. Now, the registered owner who gets sued can go back and sue the actual owner to get their money back, but the initial responsibility and the entire headache of the lawsuit, that falls squarely on them. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. You've sold your car. You've signed the papers. You've even waved goodbye as it drove down the street.
But if that registration has not been officially changed, who is really on the hook? Well, as the case of Erezo versus Jepte made perfectly clear, the answer is you.